fleet of helicopters fly across a hot afternoon desert. Somewhere else, and in a time long forgotten, a giant spaceship, the Ark, is about to crash on Earth. We see a soldier nursing his dead comrade, and ominously enough, Autobot leader Optimus Prime damaged and seemingly inoperational. And then, another vision, this time of a space shuttle mid-launch. It's revealed that most of these, from the helicopters, the soldiers, and right down to the space shuttle, come from the drunken dreams of Sparky Witwicky. The visions only stop when his son Spike wakes him up in front of a local dive bar. Spike actually came to the bar to tell his dad that he's going with his friend Carly for a night of stargazing up at Hangers Rock. Sparky sees that Spike has brought his late brother Jimmy's telescope with him, and the old man says he should just forget about Jimmy altogether. The two Witwicky boys get into an argument, and it only stops when Davey, Sparky's friend and coworker, arrives and the two older gentlemen leave on Davey's truck. With his dad gone, Spike meets with Carly in front of her absolutely metal van that Carly painted herself, and the two make their way to Hangers Rock. On their way there, the two friends talk about their plans after high school. We find out that Carly's planning to study art at Berkeley, while Spike, despite his dad's wishes, wants to train to become an astronaut. The two's trek to the top of Hangers Rock is interrupted when the ground beneath them collapses just as they are about to reach the summit. When they recover, they're surprised to discover that they've fallen into a cave. Little do they know that they're actually inside of the Ark's turbines. Spike and Carly journey deeper into the Ark to find a way back to the surface until they eventually reach a giant control center full of Autobots and Decepticons. Carly spots an exit, but they stop in their tracks when they suddenly see one of the robots, the Autobot Jetfire, arrive inside the command center, so the kids hide. Jetfire inserts a gadget into the computer to revive his fellow Cybertronians. But there's one problem. He had no idea at this point that not everything is copacetic between the Autobots and the Decepticons. The first one to get reconstructed and come back to life is Starscream. Jetfire welcomes back his old friend, and Starscream thanks him before shooting the unoperational body of Autobot Bumblebee right in the head. Shocked, Jetfire asks Starscream what on Cybertron he just did, and Starscream gets him up to speed. Cybertron is fractured into a couple of different factions. Anyone against the Decepticons must die. Teletran 1 continues to revive the other Cybertronians in the room, but not before Starscream shoots Jetfire in the gut for trying to stop him from permanently killing the other Autobots. Starscream was just about to deliver Jetfire the killing blow when, as if on cue, Optimus Prime springs into action and grabs him from behind. Meanwhile, Carly and Spike just hide and pray that they don't get caught in the crossfire. Optimus then picks up Starscream and gives him an earth-shattering suplex. Seeing that the robots are preoccupied, the two kids make a run for it, but Optimus spots them. The Autobot leader asks what they are, and Spike introduces himself. However, their conversation is cut short when Starscream recovers and starts spraying energy bullets at Optimus. He shields Spike and Carly from harm, and thankfully, another Autobot wakes up to provide some backup. It's Ratchet, and he welcomes Starscream with a cracking high kick right to his shoulder blade. But the Autobots are not out of the woods yet, because this time Decepticon Skywarp has just awakened and starts blasting the two Autobots with his wrist blasters. Optimus and Ratchet take cover and notice that they're about to get pinned, as another Decepticon, Soundwave, is about to become online too. The Autobot leader comes up with a plan. He spots his trailer and tells Ratchet to load up their other allies there so they can escape. Optimus makes a break for his blaster to give Ratchet some much needed cover fire while he retrieves the trailer, but Soundwave has become fully operational again and blasts Optimus with his launcher. This sends the Autobot leader flying. When he recovers, he sees Bumblebee's dead body lying on the floor, and all Optimus can do is to cradle it and mourn. Spike sees this and realizes that Optimus might not be a bad guy after all. Meanwhile, newly revived Decepticon Ravage and his crew gang up on Optimus and jump him. He struggles to get his blaster, so Spike and Carly come in clutch and help the Autobot get his gun. Optimus, with immense regret, reaches for his blaster and starts shooting. Optimus destroys Teletran 1 to make sure no other Decepticons can revive. Ratchet turns back in horror with what his leader had just done. Optimus's brutal act of desperation gives everyone just enough time to escape. Optimus whisks the two kids away as they and Ratchet roll out of there with their trailer containing the other Autobots. Starscream and Skywarp chase them while Jetfire recovers inside the Ark's command center and follows suit. He catches up with them shortly after, and at this point, Jetfire chooses his side in the war and shoots at Starscream. The Decepticon just brushes this off, but he and Skywarp stop their pursuit when they realize they lack the Energon to do it. Not long after that, the Autobots, Spike and Carly, hide out in the town's old quarry. Optimus spots Jetfire, who's dying from the wound he got earlier. They say their farewells, and we can all conclude that this is just not Optimus's day. To make matters worse, Starscream and his Decepticons have the Ark right now, and they're planning on reviving the other Decepticons. Soundwave tells them that they lack the juice to do it. After all, the machine was severely damaged. In typical Starscream fashion, in Megatron's absence, he asserts himself as the new leader of the Decepticons. He doesn't even want his allies mentioning Megatron's name. But being the leader though, it's up to Starscream to find a new energy source to fix Teletran 1. So he attacks the town's power plant, the same place where Sparky Witwicky works. And in a brutal, complete disregard for human life, Starscream squishes Sparky's coworker Dave like a bug, amused by how fragile humans are. The next morning, Optimus admires Earth's surroundings and notes how different it is from Cybertron, about how the living things here are so small and fragile compared to them. He and Spike then get a little bit more acquainted with each other, and Optimus tells the boy everything that happened to him and the Autobots up until that point. We find out that, as Starscream told Jetfire before, there's been a war going on for 200 years now between the Cybertronian factions, the Autobots and Decepticons. It's revealed that the Autobots were actually losing the fight, which prompted them to hop onto the Ark and escape their home planet. However, before they could leave, the then leader of the Decepticons, Megatron, attacked the Autobots, and it ultimately led to the Ark crash landing on Earth. Their conversation is cut short when the newly activated Autobot Cliffjumper arrives and greets Optimus. He then introduces the new arrival to Carly and Spike. Cliffjumper is kind of freaked out by humans at first, but he does get over it. Later, the Autobots go back inside the quarry where Ratchet has set up their very own Autobot revival bay made up of scrap metal he found lying around and parts of Optimus's tactical trailer. But just like the Decepticons, they don't have enough Energon to revive their allies. Optimus offers to use the Matrix of Leadership, the Energon-packed power inside him, to revive the rest of the Autobots. However, Ratchet stops him from doing it, considering that the process will kill him. On the other hand, Cliffjumper can only hope that the Decepticons are having the same problems as them. Back at the power plant, cops have arrived after Starscream's attack, and they don't believe Sparky when he tells them about it. That is until Skywarp and the other Decepticons crash the scene to siphon off electricity and steal metal from the town's grid. Not even the Air Force can do anything to stop the dastardly Decepticons when they send a couple fighter planes to deal with them. The whole robots in disguise thing is in full effect as the Air Force is unsure if Starscream is an ally or a foe. They have Starscream in their sights, but he slaps the jet in midair, causing the pilots to eject. As the pilots shoot up, Starscream claps his hands together and squishes the pilot like a mosquito. The other pilot, Duke, survives and with some incredible maneuvering dodges Starscream's attacks and even manages to temporarily blind the Decepticon leader with his flare gun before escaping. At the power plant, Sparky tries to hop in the cop's car to get away from the Decepticons. Skywarp almost catches him, but he's interrupted when one of the fighter jets that Starscream downed comes crashing towards the plant. Back at the quarry, Optimus and the kids see smoke coming from the power plant's direction, so he and the Autobots decide to intervene. Spike comes with them, while Carly rushes home in her van. Little does Carly know that one of Soundwave's personal minions, Laserbeak, is tailing her. Sometime later, Sparky arrives home and grabs his old gear from his army days. He spots Carly passing by the Witwicky house on her way home, so he pulls her inside. And remember Davey? Yeah, it turns out the poor guy was Carly's dad, and Sparky tells the girl that the robots had killed him. Carly has a breakdown and Sparky does his best to help her get her wits together before asking the girl where Spike is. Before she can answer though, Laserbeak bursts in the Witwicky home. Sparky tells Carly to get behind him, but as you'd expect, bullets just bounce off these robots and Laserbeak ends up tossing Sparky across the room. The bird-like Decepticon was just about to attack Carly when Cliffjumper, well, jumps onto the scene and tussles with Laserbeak. The minuscule Autobot proves he's not the guy to mess with as he knocks out the bad robot bird with a high kick that nearly breaks Laserbeak's neck. Cliffjumper helps Carly get back on her feet, but Sparky, having no idea that the horned red robot is one of the good guys, blasts Cliffjumper's face with his shotgun. It doesn't kill the little guy, but the impact knocks him a few feet away. Then Sparky grabs Carly by the arm and the two ride away from there. Back inside the Ark, Starscream bosses around Soundwave, who's doing his best to fix Teletran 1. Soundwave tells his new leader that the metals they scavenge from the plant aren't nearly enough to fix the semi-sentient Cybertronian computer. Soundwave mutters something about what Megatron would have done in this situation, but Starscream hears this, and in a classic Starscream meltdown, he slaps Soundwave while screaming never to mention Megatron's name in front of him ever again. They then get a message from Laserbeak informing them that an Autobot has been spotted, and Starscream orders Skywarp to deal with it. Sparky and Carly arrive at the local dive bar to discover that most of the town's men have formed a militia to fight against the robot invaders. Carly tries to tell Sparky that not all of them are bad, but the man's just too paranoid right now. He's not taking any chances. At the moment, Cliffjumper peeks into the bar and tries to calmly introduce himself to the humans, but Sparky starts blasting at him again. Carly pleads with the old Witwicky man to stop shooting at Cliffjumper, but things just get more hectic when Skywarp lands in the middle of the street. Skywarp punches Cliffjumper before absolutely and easily flinging the humans out of his way. Somewhere else, Optimus and Spike see the commotion happening in the middle of town and they rush towards it. While all this is happening, Skywarp has almost eradicated the entire town militia, so he sets his attention back to Cliffjumper. The Decepticon enforcer was just about ready to terminate Cliffjumper when Carly steps in. Cliffjumper begs the girl to get away as far as possible as Skywarp loads up his wrist blasters. But it turns out Carly's intervention just gave Optimus enough time to reach them and run into Skywarp. Optimus then immediately transforms and rushes towards the Decepticon. Skywarp uses one of his teleportation windows to catch Optimus unaware, but the Autobot leader ultimately recovers and gives Skywarp an overhead slam. Optimus isn't done yet either. He summons his battle axe and prepares to go medieval on the Decepticon, but his plans are cut a little short when a couple of militiamen blast Optimus's arm off with a rocket launcher. This gives Skywarp an opening to start spraying Optimus with energy bullets. Spike sees this and starts to run towards his new robot friend. Meanwhile, Sparky and the militia start shooting at both Optimus and Skywarp. A stray bullet from one of their guns hits Spike right through the gut. In the middle of the battlefield, Optimus gathers all his resolve to rip out his busted arm and beat Skywarp in the head with it. In the aftermath of the battle, Optimus sees Spike half dead, lying face down on the ground. He picks up the boy while Sparky desperately tries to stop him. However, Optimus finally convinces him that he's not one of the evil bots, so he tells Sparky to come with him as Optimus transforms back into his truck form. He's gonna save Spike. Not long after that, Starscream arrives in the middle of the abandoned ruined town. He spots Skywarp, who begs him for help after getting his metallic butt handed to him by Optimus. Starscream doesn't want to hear any of it and instead presses Skywarp for the Autobots' location. He soon catches up with Optimus and the Witwicky boys rushing away. The leader of the Autobots calls Ratchet for backup as Starscream barrages them with blasts while in his jet form. Eventually, Starscream manages to cut off Optimus in the middle of the road. He prepares to face off against the Autobot. But Carly and Cliffjumper arrive just in the nick of time to sweep Starscream off his feet and allow Optimus to run him over before he and Cliffjumper make their escape. Optimus and his friends arrive at a hospital and they rush Spike into the operating room, but at that moment, Laserbeak suddenly appears and starts shooting at them. Optimus and Cliffjumper shield the medical staff, Carly and the Witwickies from harm. However, another one of Soundwave's spies, Rumble, sneaks behind Cliffjumper and gives the little Autobot a back-breaking strike that sends him flying. At that same moment, Soundwave arrives on the scene and gives Optimus a front kick to the face. With the two Autobots out of commission, Soundwave gets ready to eliminate both Optimus and Cliffjumper, but Starscream arrives and tells his fellow Decepticon to wait. Starscream notices that the hospital is used to fix the squishy ones and to inflict even more pain on his rival before eliminating him. Starscream opens fire on the building with a grin on his face. Inside the hospital, the doctors and nurses operating on Spike lose their medical equipment's power when Starscream starts blasting the whole place. Starscream's decision to make Optimus suffer has given Ratchet and a newly reactivated Jazz time to arrive on the scene and provide their friends with some much needed backup. Jazz proves he's an absolute unit as he shoots Starscream and pile drives Soundwave. Optimus and Cliffjumper recover and regroup with their fellow Autobots, ultimately resulting in the Decepticons' retreat. In the aftermath, Optimus checks on Spike. The doctors tell Sparky that they've stabilized his son, but with the power in the hospital gone, it's only a matter of time before Spike and all the other patients in the building lose their lives. Optimus, fed up with the fighting and the horrors that come with it, decides to activate his matrix of leadership to bring the electricity back to the entire hospital. Later, Starscream, Soundwave, and Skywarp arrive back inside the ARC's command center. The new Decepticon leader rants about how Soundwave isn't doing his job to fix Teletran 1 and revive their allies. Soundwave reminds Starscream that they don't have the Cybertronian technology that they need for such repairs, but at the moment, the two of them get a bright idea when they turn towards the injured Skywarp and then ruthlessly sacrifice him for parts. Back at the hospital, Sparky admits to Spike, who is now in a coma, that he has become a lousy father ever since Jimmy's death and the fact that he has PTSD from his time in the military. He then asks Optimus, is there a way that the Cybertronian can help Spike regain consciousness? Optimus tells Sparky that he's used up all his energy bringing power back to the hospital. The rest is now up to the Great Spark. Sometime later, Optimus goes back to the old quarry where he and Ratchet get into a heated argument. Ratchet thinks that Optimus shouldn't have used the last of the Matrix of Leadership's energy to help the humans. Instead, Optimus should have used it to heal himself. However, Optimus firmly believes that it's their fault that the humans got roped into their war, so he owes it to them to help. At that moment, Optimus and Ratchet drop their debate when they see Jazz suddenly falling to the ground. Ratchet reveals that he scrounged up all the remaining Energon they had in order to revive Jazz earlier, but even that was just enough to activate their friend for a short period of time. Ratchet stresses his point: they need to find an energy source if they're going to revive the other Autobots. However, he does have another ace up their sleeve as he opens the door to Optimus' trailer and shows their leader something inside. Optimus takes a look at it and immediately tells the Autobot medic that there's no way he can use this, but Ratchet tries to convince him and tells him that they have no other choice. At that moment, it seems the Autobots' fortunes are starting to turn when Sparky overhears their conversation and tells the two Autobots that he might know a place where they can gather the energy they need. While this is happening, Carly and Cliffjumper bond over the fact that they've lost family to the Autobot-Decepticon war. Their chat is cut short when Optimus arrives. Cliffjumper looks at his leader with terror as Optimus reveals Megatron's right arm is attached to him. The thing he saw inside the trailer, the trump card that Ratchet was referring to, was Megatron's fusion cannon. Back at the Ark, Starscream and Soundwave successfully use Skywarp as an energy source. Starscream revels in his victory and his new assumption of power, but unbeknownst to them, somewhere in the mountains, Megatron's inactive, wrecked body is sticking out of the side of a wall of ice, just waiting to be found. Optimus and Sparky share war stories and bond over the horrors of war they've each experienced. Meanwhile, we find out that Starscream and Soundwave has successfully used Skywarp to power Electron 1 Decepticons. Soundwave tries to start by reactivating Ravage first, but Starscream just proves how much of a ruthless leader he is by kicking the little Decepticon while berating Soundwave yet again for trying to reactivate the weakest among their ranks. Instead, Starscream uses the newly fixed machine to fix Thundercracker first. It works, and when Thundercracker sees what Skywarp has been used for, he then asks Starscream what happened. Like a true dictator, Starscream evades the question and tells his ally that Skywarp willingly sacrificed himself for the greater good. Soon after that, Decepticons Frenzy and Reflector also get revived. They then all set out to the Autobots' location for what Starscream announces a violence party. While this is happening, Sparky has led the Autobots to the town's dam. Ratchet and a haphazardly rebuilt Wheeljack have crafted a hydro turbine to use the dam's water to create hydroelectricity and help them revive the other Autobots. Ratchet proposes that they should start by healing Optimus's wounds first, but he instead tells his subordinates to prioritize reactivating their fallen comrades. So they start by reviving Arcee. Plan works and Arcee is online. But almost at that exact same moment, the Decepticons arrive to wreak havoc on the dam. Starscream sees the hydro turbine and orders his comrades to destroy it. Meanwhile, Optimus rallies his troops to protect their newly built power source as Arcee and Ratchet hurry to bring Jazz back to life. Reflector enters the fray and tells the Autobots that he's about to drop some ISO, instant suffering and obliteration. But before he can even get his metallic feet on the ground, Optimus points the fusion cannon right in his evil quippy face and blasts Reflector at point-blank range. Frenzy sees this and prepares to attack Optimus, but the Autobot leader has had enough of these Decepticons and grabs Frenzy in midair, slams into the ground, and absolutely wrecks this little Decepticon. Meanwhile, Cliffjumper and Carly try to shoot at Thundercracker, but the Decepticon fighter plane manages to shoot their vantage point, which makes Carly fall off the dam. Thankfully, Arcee comes in clutch and saves her before she hits the ground. Just like before, Rumble sneaks behind Cliffjumper to hit him with another spring-loaded punch, but it's not going to work this time because Jazz has come online and proceeds to blast the sneaky Decepticon before he can get the jump on Cliff. Starscream, mortified that Optimus is using his former leader's weapon, gets ready to face off against Optimus. The leader of the Autobots misses the first shot with his fusion cannon as Starscream slides right under him and focuses his fire on the hydro turbine. Starscream manages to destroy the machine, but this makes him fail to notice Optimus right behind him, and he gets a chest full of pure, uncut energy blast courtesy of Megatron's signature weapon. The Decepticons ultimately tuck their tail between their legs and make a run for it. In the aftermath of this skirmish, Wheeljack is devastated to report that it's going to take a while before they can fix the hydro turbine. However, Optimus reassures his crew that everything is going to be alright. Because now there are more Autobots than there are Decepticons, which means they can go on the offensive and take back the Ark from their enemies. The other Autobots agree, and they prepare to roll out along with Sparky. Carly tries to tag along, but Sparky and Optimus tell her to stay. However, Cliffjumper manages to sneak her in just as they're about to leave. Later, the Autobots arrive at the Ark. Everything was going according to plan until the Constructicons, construction equipment themed Decepticons, ambush them. Starscream emerges to meet the Autobots and orders the Constructicons to fuse together and form the gigantic Decepticon called the Devastator. The mere sight of Devastator makes Sparky relive his trauma, especially losing Jimmy in a space shuttle incident. Meanwhile, Optimus orders everyone to retreat as Devastator tries to literally pound them into the ground. Some distance away, Cliffjumper and Carly spot Devastator attacking their friends. The Autobot tries to rush into the fray, but Carly stops Cliff and tells him that's a death wish waiting to happen. Instead, they should be smart, so they find a different way to make it inside the Ark. Back on the battlefield, Optimus and the Autobots retreat into the Ark's entrance, kicking Starscream's face along the way. Thundercracker tries to shoot Sparky, but Optimus shields the frozen ex-soldier from harm. However, this move allows Devastator to grab Optimus by the leg and ragdoll the Autobot leader all over the place. The giant Decepticon only lets go of Optimus when Arcee and Jazz manage to pepper his arm with shots. They then carry the unconscious Prime to safety all the way inside the Ark, but just as they're about to make it, Devastator manages to grab Ratchet by the leg and slowly drag him out of the Ark's entrance. With no other choice, Ratchet tells his comrades to close the blast doors just as Devastator is about to pull him out. This ends with Ratchet losing one of his legs, but hey, I guess it's better than getting rampaged by a giant robot, right? Meanwhile, Cliffjumper and Carly find a secret entrance to the Ark, only to meet Starscream there. Back inside the Ark, the Autobots panic as they try to find a way to heal Optimus, but he thinks it's too late for him. Instead, Optimus takes out the matrix of leadership from his chest and asks anyone in the room to take it and be the new leader of the Autobots. He drops the matrix and no one picks it up. Instead, Sparky decides to make the ultimate sacrifice and offer his life to the Matrix to completely heal Optimus. The ex-soldier asks Optimus to watch over Spike and tell his son that he's proud of him before he steps into the Matrix. It works, and Optimus is completely revived. Just in time too, because Devastator and the other Decepticons have busted a hole through the Ark to attack the Autobots. Optimus Prime, now fully rejuvenated, grabs one of Devastator's fingers and rips it off before starting to blast the giant robot. And if that wasn't enough, Optimus even launches himself at Devastator and gives him a drop kick to the chin. Back at Cliffjumper and Starscream, the Decepticon leader has the minuscule Autobot in a tight crossface, which makes him fail to notice that Carly has grabbed Cliffjumper's giant pistol behind him, and it hits Starscream square in the chest. Cliffjumper then recovers, grabs his gun back from Carly, and prepares to eliminate Starscream. But Cliff can't do it. He's tired of this war, all the brutality. But in this act of mercy, Starscream grabs Carly and holds her hostage. Meanwhile, Optimus lures Devastator away from the Ark and baits the giant Decepticon into falling off a cliff. At this same moment, Starscream is about to squish Carly the same way he killed her dad, but the Decepticon ultimately let her go when Devastator crashes right on top of him. Cliffjumper catches Carly, but Carly is upset. She doesn't understand why he didn't finish Starscream off, especially when she tells him that he could have ended this whole war. Down below, the Constructicons have separated with one another as they retreat with a heavily injured Starscream. Somewhere else, just outside the Ark, Optimus tries to convince Soundwave to stop fighting with them and instead find a way to save Cybertron together. Soundwave takes a moment to consider Optimus's offer, especially when he reminds himself how Starscream treated Ravage. Still, Soundwave chooses violence and tries to sucker punch Optimus. The Autobot leader grabs his fist and tells Soundwave that he may want peace, but he's no fool. At that moment, Thundercracker arrives to fetch Soundwave as Optimus tells them that they're gonna see each other again. While all this is happening, Spike Witwicky wakes up inside his hospital room. The boy can't speak, but he picks up a pencil and paper, and the first thing he writes is, "Where is my dad?" Our story opens with an intense firefight happening between the rival factions of the Autobots and Decepticons somewhere on Cybertron. And it's not going well for the good guys as Alita, Huffer, Cup, and Warpath try to weather an assault from all sides. Huffer tells everyone that they've got to find cover right away, and Alita points to a structure at the far end of the area. It's a long way to get there, but the Autobots have no other choice. So Cup and Warpath check with Huffer to come up with a plan on how they'll proceed with their retreat, where Huffer will serve as the group's rear guard. It's a risky proposition though, because Huffer informs them that his shield is only about 7% operational. Still, the Autobot welcomes the task. A second later, Cup gives the order to spring their plan and make a run for it. Huffer dies a hero as he manages to block a few shots from the Decepticons, but ultimately it's blasted when his shield is destroyed. The rest of the team keeps going, Warpath and Cup doing their best to provide cover fire. Alita tries to turn back and help her friends, but Cup simply tells her to save whoever is inside the structure for all of them. And a split second later, Cup falls to Decepticon fire. Alita makes it to the gigantic building, and once she's there, we discover that the Cybertronian that Cup was referring to earlier is none other than Ultra Magnus. Alita is horrified to find what happened to their commander, with only a husk remaining of their once proud leader. We then flash forward to the present, where an aircraft carrier named the USS Harrison floats in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. Its captain receives a call from their admiral, who orders the USS Harrison to turn their ship around and head for the coast of Washington, because according to their captain, they're about to find some robots. Meanwhile, we find out that the Decepticon ranks are currently in turmoil as Soundwave and the rest of the group plan a coup to overthrow their current leader, Starscream. Starscream gets wind of their plans and confronts Soundwave about it, even pushing around the little guy to coerce him and the other Decepticons from rebelling. But Soundwave isn't backing down this time. He and the rest of the Decepticons have had enough of Starscream's incompetence, especially after their most recent defeat at the hands of the Autobots. So he tells their current leader that it's time to step down. Starscream tries to discredit Soundwave, but Thundercracker stops him and reminds their whiny leader that Soundwave has challenged him. This is the way, and now they have to fight for leadership of the group. Being the politician that he is, Starscream tries to break tradition and refuse Soundwave's challenge. His pleas don't even remotely work, and he looks to everyone in fear as combat is about to begin. Soundwave delivers a devastating blast to Starscream's shoulder. Cowering in the corner, Starscream tries to offer Soundwave to be the Decepticons' co-leaders, but Soundwave answers his opponent with a cracking punch to the jaw. He then hurls Starscream away with a powerful kick and asks him to yield, but the jet-transforming Decepticon chooses to fight dirty instead and throws a rock right at Soundwave before blasting him. But Soundwave just dodges Starscream's surprise attack. As Starscream lunges forward, Soundwave grabs him by the face and bashes his head into the ground. In pure domination, Soundwave throws away Starscream's gun and opts to beat the spark out of the disposed leader. Starscream tries to fight back with another blast, which Soundwave easily sidesteps. Soundwave continues to unload all his pent-up anger as he calls for Laserbeak to take out one of Starscream's eyes. Still, the failed Decepticon leader deludes himself into thinking that he still has some authority here. He tells Soundwave to stop and all will be forgiven, but Soundwave isn't having any of it. Soundwave leans in and drives his hand into Starscream's chest and pulls out the Cybertronian's insides after delivering a cold line. The only path left is extermination. To end the fight, Soundwave then kicks Starscream's body down the cliff, saying his final goodbye. As the new leader of the Decepticons, Soundwave lets his people know that the parts he took from Starscream will not only be used to reassemble Ravage, but to rebuild, conquer, and destroy together. After that, everyone bends the knee and Soundwave is met with thunderous chants of the name of their new leader. Somewhere else, an obviously ticked off Carly learns how to use a gun. RC approaches her and asks if she can join her target practice. The Autobot then accidentally blasts all the bottles and cans that were serving as Carly's targets, which impresses her. The female Autobot then expresses how much she resents being such a good shot, but Carly tells her not to feel bad about it because those same skills are going to be useful for when they destroy Starscream. RC then warns Carly to not be consumed by her hate, but the girl simply brushes her off. Still, the female Autobot remains cordial and apologizes for overstepping her bounds. She then tells Carly how much the girl reminds RC of herself in the past. As the Autobot reveals, she used to be consumed by hate and rage against the Decepticons. You see, the evil Cybertronians killed her whole clan and then left this gaping revenge-shaped hole in her soul. It was only through the intervention of Ultra Magnus that RC was able to pull herself from the brink. Carly listens to all of this, but she ultimately decides to ignore RC. While this is happening, we find that Jazz and Cliffjumper are inside their base, watching the two. Cliffjumper confides in his friend of how much he regrets being too weak to pull the trigger when he had Starscream in his crosshairs. But Jazz reassures him that there's no shame in showing mercy, even for someone as deplorable as Starscream. Jazz sort of makes Cliffjumper feel better when he tells him that he's not the only one being ignored by these young humans at this time, because we immediately find out that Spike hasn't been talking to Optimus ever since he found out about his dad's death. As Spike puts it, he's not mad at Optimus, he just needs time to process everything. Later, the Autobots roll out to their base and we find that Optimus blames himself for what happened to Spike. He suddenly envisions himself holding a baby in his hand, which causes Optimus to swerve and fall towards a clearing. Ratchet comes to his aid to ask what's wrong, but all Optimus can tell his friend is that he doesn't know. Not long after that, Wheeljack informs the rest of the Autobots that reviving their teammates would take more time than usual. He has to do it manually, considering that the scuttled Decepticon Skywarp has locked him out of Teletran 1. The rest of the team expresses their frustration, and RC tells everyone that they have to find the Decepticons quickly. And in that moment, Optimus walks in to humbly, yet firmly, ask Wheeljack to do the best he can to revive the rest of their friends. That's because, as Optimus puts it, they might have the upper hand now, but who knows how long before the Decepticons are able to mobilize again. Wheeljack then tells their leader that they're going to need a vehicle that will give them a bird's eye view of the area if they're gonna look for their enemies. Optimus says that he has a plan for that before declaring that the Autobots are coming for each and every Decepticon out there. We then see Carly and Spike hanging out by the lake. Cliffjumper approaches the two kids and offers them a couple of drinks, but Carly still isn't on good terms with the little Autobot. Spike tries to urge her to pick up the olive branch that Cliffjumper is handing her, but she refuses. Instead, Carly lashes out and tells Cliffjumper how frustrated she is that he allowed Starscream to escape. According to her, she has no way of trusting Cliffjumper now that she knows he couldn't make the hard choices. Back at Cybertron, we find that Alita has taken Ultra Magnus as she desperately tries to discover a way out of the stronghold. Plus, we also learn that Ultra Magnus is still alive, but he's pretty much lost the will to live after being tortured and stripped for parts for so long. Ultra Magnus even asks his old friend Alita to take him out and end his suffering, but Alita won't do it. Instead, she promises Ultra Magnus that she's not letting him go after all this time. However, if they both get captured, she'll make sure to end both of their sparks together. On Earth, we discover that the USS Harrison has finally detected the robots that they were hunting via their ship's radars. But the tables turn quickly when the sailors aboard the aircraft carrier discover that those aren't ordinary robots, it's Soundwave and the Decepticons. The evil Cybertronians hijack the USS Harrison, with Soundwave specifically ordering his team to not sink it until they're right above their intended destination. All the people aboard the ship desperately make their escape, hopping on hundreds of lifeboats to take them to safety. At the same time, Thundercracker grabs the captain of the ship and threatens to kill the old man. But the Decepticon ultimately lets the captain go. The old man then runs to one of the rescue boats to get as far away from their assailants as possible. Thundercracker simply watches the human drift away on their lifeboats, but Soundwave approaches him to ask why he's letting these people go. Showing mercy and pity, Thundercracker informs his leader that they couldn't do anything to them even if they wanted to, but Soundwave makes him realize that they shouldn't leave any witnesses, so the Decepticons take out each and every soldier right then and there. Back inside the Ark, Wheeljack is still trying his best to get back control of Teletran 1 and revive their fellow Autobots, but it turns out that Skywarp continues to block them from having access to it. Optimus comes up with a plan to bring Skywarp to their side by showing him a recording of what his fellow Decepticons did to him. At that moment, Carly bursts into the room to try and blow up Skywarp with a rocket launcher, but RC intercepts the projectile at her own risk. Suddenly, Wheeljack's legs start to reassemble, and they realize that Skywarp is finally helping them through Teletran 1. Carly isn't too happy about the Autobots working with a Decepticon, so she storms out of the room. Later, RC checks in on Carly where the teenager asks why they don't use their tremendous size and power to their advantage. RC then tells her that it's because the Autobots, Optimus especially, wants nothing but peace. According to RC, Optimus might not show it, but he's actually the one who has lost the most in the war against the Decepticons. Back at Soundwave's team, we find out that they've sunk the USS Harrison to the bottom of the sea, and he and Thundercracker make their way to the ocean floor. It's revealed that they're going to use the nuclear power fueling the USS Harrison to power the Nemesis, the Decepticon mothership. Back at the Ark, Optimus has another dream about a toddler. However, he shakes it off when he hears someone calling for his name. We then find out that Optimus's plan to have an aerial vehicle was to partially revive Jetfire, who is stuck in his jet form, and use their old friend to search for the Decepticons. Jetfire isn't too happy to be brought back to life, especially as a mere vehicle. Optimus apologizes for this, but tells his old ally that they had no other choice. Back inside the Nemesis, Soundwave and the rest of the team hear loud banging sounds from deep within the ship. They all know who it is, so Thundercracker asks their leader if they should open the door. Soundwave gives the order, and we discover that it's Astrotrain, who promptly goes on a warpath as he tries to look for the Decepticon who put them in that prison, Megatron. Astrotrain beats up a few of the other Decepticons, but Soundwave ultimately manages to calm him down. He promises Astrotrain that he can do anything he wants with Megatron when they find him, but for now, Soundwave has a mission for his fellow Decepticon. The Ark scanners get a hit on the Decepticons around the same time, and Optimus Prime orders his people to mobilize. Carly tries to join them, telling Optimus that she can fight off their enemies with the bag of guns she's bringing, but Optimus firmly refuses. So RC does the kid a solid and makes Carly her iron apprentice. From now on, they'll be inseparable and pretty much like family. Still, Optimus doesn't allow them to join the fight against the Decepticons, as he orders both RC and Carly to stay at the Ark and guard it. Shortly after that, Optimus, Cliffjumper, and Jazz hop inside Jetfire and fly away to their enemy's location. Inside the Nemesis, Soundwave informs his allies that their ship will not fly again, but they're not here to do that anyway, because there's only one thing that they need from the Nemesis right now. It's antenna, because it's with this antenna that Soundwave is able to call for backup as fellow Decepticon Shockwave flashes on the Nemesis screen and asks the new Decepticon leader if it's really him. Not long after that, Optimus's team arrives near the Decepticons' location. What they don't know, however, is that Soundwave and Shockwave have already created a link between the Nemesis and their base at Cybertron. At that moment, Optimus and his crew witness a whirlpool form in the middle of the Pacific Ocean just as they prepare to make their approach. A huge red energy pulse suddenly springs out of the whirlpool and shoots up into space, grazing Jetfire and forcing the Autobots to crash on the sea floor. When Optimus comes to, he sees that the red energy pulse came from a Cybertronian gateway linking the two worlds. The Constructicons guard it and open fire when they see the Autobots in their midst. And almost at the same moment, Shockwave steps out of the gateway. A firefight ensues between the two Cybertronian factions. Shockwave then transforms into a powerful Astro Magnum as he leaps toward Soundwave's hand. The new Decepticon commander prepares to shoot Cliffjumper, but Ratchet comes to his rescue and ends up taking the blast for his friend. Shockwave starts to gloat as Cliffjumper cradles the body of his friend. But before they can shoot again, Optimus leaps into action and kicks Soundwave in the face, which forces him to let go of the Astro Magnum. Shockwave transforms back to his humanoid form and prepares to fight with the Autobot leader. Meanwhile, Carly, Arcee, and Wheeljack are on their way to the local dam to try and siphon some of its power into the heart. However, they eventually encounter the town militia blocking their path. The people are just about ready to shoot down the Autobots when Carly stands between them to try to explain everything. Back at the hospital, Spike's doctor informs him that he might not be able to walk again. Their consultation is interrupted when Astrotrain arrives outside the establishment demanding Spike. The doctor rushes out of the hospital to tell the Decepticon to stop, and surprisingly enough, Astrotrain is relatively agreeable. According to him, he doesn't want to harm anyone innocent, but he has a mission, so he might have to do it in order to get to Spike. At that moment, Spike appears before Astrotrain and agrees to come with him. The Decepticon then whisks him away after transforming into a space shuttle. While this is happening, we find out that the Decepticons have ganged up on Optimus. Jazz tries to help him, but one of the Constructicons runs him over before he can reach his friend. Ultimately, Shockwave gets the better of Optimus, and the Decepticon gives him one of the most brutal tombstone piledrivers you'll see in comics, which knocks out the Autobot leader. At the same time, we find out that the other Decepticons have caught up to Alita and Ultra Magnus within the Citadel. Alita desperately tries to escape as she shoots her way through its halls. Ultimately, she sees a red light emanating from a corner in one of the rooms of the structure. With no other choice and no other exits to be found, Alita and Ultra Magnus head towards the light, only to discover that it's the same gateway that Shockwave used to come to Earth. The two arrive in the middle of the Autobots and Decepticons skirmish, and Alita is surprised to see Optimus there. At that moment, Alita notices that the enemy Combaticons are also coming to Earth from the portal. They get ready to merge, so Alita thinks on her feet and grabs one of the rifles lying on the ground. She then blasts the gateway to make sure that the Combaticons were unable to mobilize. However, the chaos escalates when Soundwave orders the men to destroy all Autobots in the area. He then blasts Jazz and Cliffjumper, and they both take a direct hit. Not far away, Optimus tries to go back and rescue Cliffjumper and Jazz, but Alita urges him to retreat. Alita drags Optimus away and tells him to transform this instant. He does as he's told, as he, Alita, and Ultra Magnus make their escape. The downed Cliffjumper sees this, and all he can do is watch his leader drive off into the distance. Soundwave gives the order to chase them, but Shockwave convinces him to let them go, because according to him, Optimus and the Autobots are now mere ants compared to what they're planning. With the skirmish over and done with, Shockwave approaches the two immobilized Autobots and prepares to conduct brutal experiments on them. Meanwhile, Astrotrain and Spike make their way towards the Nemesis, and the two start talking. He pretty much tells Spike that he and the Decepticons aim to siphon off Earth's energy and resources to bring life to Cybertron again. But even so, he can commiserate with Spike for what they have to do to the boy's planet. Astrotrain then tells Spike the truth, that Shockwave will probably torture him. But at that same moment, a little blue gadget latches itself onto Astrotrain's belly, which then causes the Decepticons' engines to shut down. Astrotrain starts to nosedive and tells Spike to brace himself for a crash landing. They skid through the ground and it seemingly knocks out Astrotrain. A few moments later, Spike hears a voice calling for him. He turns around to see an Autobot named Beachcomber who tells him he's there to rescue him. We then find out how Beachcomber arrived on Earth. It turns out that he found himself marooned on a moon after Skywarp tossed him out of the ship during a battle that happened between the Autobots and the Decepticons millions of years ago. In fact, he just hung around on the moon's surface for ages until he saw humans land on it in 1969. Beachcomber took the opportunity to hitchhike on NASA's shuttle on their return flight. Ultimately, he landed on Earth and managed to locate the Ark not long after that. However, Beachcomber decided not to reactivate his fellow Autobots within the ship for fear that it'll only put Earth in danger when the Cybertronian War spills over to this planet. We find out that he had been telling this whole story to Spike in the present. As for Astrotrain, well, Beachcomber managed to subdue him at this moment, and for the most part, this Autobot has become a pacifist. He even offers Astrotrain a drink and calls him a friend. Beachcomber then finds out that the Decepticons are planning on harvesting Earth to revitalize Cybertron, an initiative led by the infamous Shockwave. Spike asks him what they should do when they see the red energy pulse looming in the distance, but Beachcomber remains firm with his decision. He wants no part of this war. Back at the Nemesis, Shockwave catches Soundwave trying to repair Ravage. Shockwave chastises his fellow Decepticon for wasting his time in such trivial matters as he takes Ravage and attempts to toss him into the recycling bin. Before he could do it though, Shockwave sees something outside the Nemesis. This prompts him to run out of the room and tell Soundwave to come with him. There, they find that whales and other marine life have gathered near the barrier of the Nemesis. The two Decepticons marvel at the beauty of these creatures as Shockwave informs his friend how wonderful it is to have such beautiful creatures aid their cause. At that same moment, one of the Constructicons tells Shockwave that their feeder is ready, and the feeder proceeds to suck up all the nearby marine life and turn them into mush. Somewhere else, the Autobots have finally reactivated their reactor. Optimus, Alita, and Ultra Magnus arrive at the Ark, and Arcee recognizes her old mentor. Optimus then informs Wheeljack about what happened to his brother Ratchet, and the other Autobot engineer does not take the news too well. Inside the Nemesis, Shockwave starts to torture Jazz and Cliffjumper. Thundercracker becomes absolutely mortified when he discovers this. However, Soundwave tells him not to dwell on such things. Just outside the Nemesis, Combaticons Onslaught and Brawl are just hanging out when they overhear Soundwave and Thundercracker having a little chat not too far away. Thundercracker is opposed to the fact that Shockwave is torturing their prisoners, since it's not honorable. However, the Decepticon commander tells them that it's a necessary evil that they have to accept if they want Shockwave's help. The two start to get into an argument when Thundercracker presses Soundwave to rescue his brother Skywarp at the Ark. But at this point, Soundwave shows how fearsome he can be when he tells Thundercracker to never forget that his life belongs to him now. Somewhere else, Optimus Prime and Alita have a conversation about their past. Alita knows what Shockwave is gonna do to Earth, so Optimus asks her if she will help him stop the Decepticons' plans. Meanwhile, Shockwave gathers the Decepticons in front of the feeder and declares it's now time to realize their plans. He then turns the machine on, and all the accumulated energy that the feeder acquired from Earth is shot through the sky and directly to Cybertron, which has now arrived near the planet's orbit. Beachcomber hops on a super cool motorized surfboard to investigate the feeder's effects the moment it happens. He glides through the waves to see various marine life getting sucked up in a vortex towards Cybertron. While this is happening, Arcee takes a moment to pay her old mentor, Ultra Magnus, a visit inside the Ark's medical bay. Alita overhears Arcee talking to the unconscious Ultra Magnus and tells her sister that she had made her choice when she abandoned Cybertron. This grinds Arcee's gears and she punches Alita in the face. Carly then asks Arcee what happened to Ultra Magnus, and what she tells the girl about what Shockwave did, and it's the same thing that he's probably going to do to Cliffjumper and Jazz as they speak. Nearby, Optimus asks Wheeljack how Ultra Magnus repairs are going. The Autobot engineer informs their leader that it's gradually progressing, but without Ratchet fully reviving Ultra Magnus would mean that they're going to have to spend all the Energon they gathered from the dam. But before he can finish his sentence, Ultra Magnus gets up from the bed and tells Optimus that he wants to fight in this new resistance. Meanwhile, Soundwave tries to ask Shockwave if he can travel back to Cybertron to get the part he needs to repair Ravage, but Shockwave continues to be a jerk and tells Soundwave to forget about Ravage and basically realign his priorities as a Decepticon. Shockwave then goes through a portal connected to his fortress on Cybertron where he meets with his Combaticon underlings. He then tells them to man their battle stations as the Autobots would surely mount an offensive against them soon. At the Ark, Wheeljack tells Optimus about how the Nemesis and the feeder are basically connected to Shockwave's fortress on their home planet. So, to stop the harvest from continuing, they have to destroy the Nemesis, which would interrupt the link between the two worlds. Optimus proposes that they prioritize rescuing Jazz and Cliffjumper, which ticks off Alita. She lashes out and tells Optimus that saving the two would mean abandoning all the other Autobot resistance fighters on their home planet. Optimus makes Alita realize that they can save both, considering that they have fine allies fighting with them. Shortly after, Arcee gears up for war and confuses Carly when she she mentions that each and every Decepticon deserves to be taken out. Alita walks in on them to apologize to Arcee for what happened earlier. After that, Alita meets with Optimus just as he finishes paying his respects to the Fallen. Alita asks if they're going to meet the Decepticons head-on, to which Optimus answers that he has a different, more subtle plan. He reveals that they're going to use Skywarp, who has now started working with the Autobots, to teleport into the Nemesis and plant charges that would blow it to bits. With the plan all set, Carly approaches them and tells the Autobots that they're making a big mistake leaving her out of the fight. However, Arcee convinces her to stay back when she tells her that she doesn't want what happened to Ultra Magnus happening to Carly. We find out that the reason Carly is so pushy about joining the skirmish is because she wants to save Cliffjumper. At that moment, Skywarp opens up a portal to the Nemesis, and Arcee promises Carly that she'll save Cliffjumper before she, Optimus, and Alita proceed with their mission. Somewhere else, Beachcomber gets Spike to agree to come with him, and the two make their way into the forest inland. Eventually, Spike and Beachcomber encounter a deer in the middle of the forest, which reminds the boy of Optimus's compassion for Earth's life. At that moment, he tells Beachcomber that he can't run away with him. Meanwhile, the feeder continues harvesting Earth's energies, so while waiting for the process to be completed, Shockwave goes back to his first passion, torturing Autobots. We find out that neither Cliffjumper nor Jazz have been broken yet. In fact, Jazz even lets out one of his music-themed puns, which ticks off Shockwave so much that he slaps the Autobot right in the face. But Jazz's confidence is immediately shaken when Shockwave tells him that he's going to torture Cliffjumper harder than before. Fortunately, Optimus and his crew arrive inside Shockwave's chambers just in time to save their friends. Alita rushes into the room shortly after that to inform the other Autobots that the explosive have been set all around the Nemesis. Arcee then pins Shockwave to the wall and prepares to take him out. However, Optimus tries to convince her not to push through with it, which only gives Shockwave enough time to fend off Arcee and escape. In fact, Optimus's whole bleeding heart speech ends up with Shockwave grabbing Cliffjumper as a hostage. They then chase him out of the room only for the Constructicons to block their path. And at that same moment, the Constructicons merge and become Devastator. Suddenly, a portal opens inside the Nemesis, and both Wheeljack and Ultra Magnus join the fray. However, the mere sight of Shockwave makes Ultra Magnus triggered. Instead of fighting their enemies, Ultra Magnus starts to have a panic attack and runs away from the battlefield. Shockwave sees this and is absolutely elated that he's broken Ultra Magnus's mind. Now, all that's left to do is break the Autobots. Carly sees her Autobot friends in trouble from the ARC screen, especially Cliffjumper, as we find Soundwave holding the minuscule Autobot by the neck. Shockwave tells his fellow Decepticons that it's time to end this fight, so he transforms into the Astro Magnum and right into Soundwave's hands. Witnessing all of this, Carly decides to ignore her marching orders and provide backup for her friends. The Autobots are currently pinned down from their enemies' heavy firepower. All the while, Carly hops into her van to enter the portal that leads to the Nemesis. Optimus and his friends try to return fire, and Wheeljack asks him if he can finally detonate the charges that Alita set and end this skirmish. Optimus tells his subordinate that he could do that, but it would mean Cliffjumper would be engulfed by the explosion. Suddenly, they hear Carly's voice a short distance away. They see that the girl has made a super sick save with her van as she crashes it right into Soundwave. Cliffjumper manages to hang on to the hood of Carly's van when it dashes away after wrecking Soundwave. Carly and Cliff get a good look at each other and they forget all about their fight. But their reunion is interrupted when Devastator hammer fists the van right into the ground. Cliff sees this, so he rushes back to the van to pull Carly out of the driver's seat. Just in time too, because Devastator stomps the whole van. Optimus commands all the Autobots to mobilize and retrieve their friends, and it's no understatement that the urgency is real because Devastator is absolutely ragdolling Cliffjumper right now. He goes flying into the gateway connected to Cybertron before Optimus could reach him. And oh man, Devastator punted Cliff so hard that he ended up crashing right into the bumbling Combaticons on the other side. Optimus decides to get some payback, so he jumps high up in the air and shoots the gigantic Decepticon in the face with his particle beam cannon. At the same time, he tells Alita to put pressure on their enemy, so she rushes into the fray and does a classic Empire Strikes Back move by wrapping the line around Devastator's legs to pull him down. It's super effective because Devastator crashes right onto the Harvester, putting a large Constructicon-shaped wrench in Shockwave's plans. With the Mega device destroyed, not only does the energy siphon stop, but it also makes Cybertron teleport back to its original coordinates in space. Seeing this happen, Shockwave rushes into the gradually closing gateway while telling Optimus and his team that he's gonna have to grab more Decepticons from Cybertron and make his enemies pay. Wheeljack tells Optimus that now it's time to detonate the charges and put an end to this devastation, but Optimus still refuses to do it, not until he saves Cliffjumper, so the Autobot leader rushes into the gateway too. On the other side, the Combaticons have Cliffjumper on the ropes and they prepare to take him out, but Optimus arrives just in time to rescue the little guy before they can pull the trigger. Shockwave witnesses this and desperately calls for his underlings to stand and fight, but they still don't listen. With no other allies around, Shockwave plays it dirty and holds Cliff hostage again. He tells Optimus that he's going to take Cliff out if he takes one more step, but the Autobot leader blows off Shockwave's arm before he can even finish his threat. Suffice it to say that Optimus has had it up to here with Shockwave, so like a true badass he tosses the rifle away as he approaches the mad Decepticon to put his hands on him. Shockwave tries to shoot for a takedown, but Optimus denies it and instead catches his enemy in a full mount. He then proceeds to give Shockwave some good old-fashioned ground and pound, with each punch echoing throughout the halls of the stronghold. In the middle of beating down the Decepticon, Optimus gets another vision of the baby, but this time, it's way darker as he sees an image of metallic veins engulfing the infant. The vision shocks Optimus to his core that he forgets his own strength and ends up crushing Shockwave's head with his bare hands. He can't even believe what he just did when he regains his senses. Even Cliff is shaken with what Optimus just did. But not Alita, because she sees all of this unfold and congratulates Optimus for returning to his old, savage self again. Optimus tells her that he didn't mean to kill Shockwave like that, but there's no time to debate because Cybertron is quickly phasing out of Earth's orbit and Optimus doesn't plan on disappearing with it. He takes Cliffjumper and tells Alita it's time to go home, but the female Autobot screws them over and she blasts the gateway that will lead them back to Earth. Optimus asks Alita why did she do that, to which she replies it's because she wants Optimus to stay on Cybertron to continue fighting in their war. Alita then points out that they can use all the energon that Shockwave harvested from Earth to their advantage, but Optimus doesn't want to reap those ill-gotten gains, so he finally tries to detonate the charges. But we find out that Alita betrayed Optimus and the Autobots when she reveals that she's never even set the explosives around the Nemesis. Alita explains that they can continue harvesting Earth's energy to help them win the war. Of course, Optimus is against this, so he points his particle beam cannon right at the Energon vats. Alita pleads with him, telling the Autobot leader that Cybertron needs him, that she needs him. But Optimus's sense of honor prevails as he blasts the vats in spite of Alita's pleas. The destruction causes a huge blast and sends them flying. Alita is left in the ruins of Shockwave's citadel, and a mix of rage and disappointment washes over her as she realizes that Optimus chose Earth over his own people. We find out that not only did Optimus blow off Shockwave's citadel, but he even managed to take a huge peninsula-sized chunk of Cybertron with him. He and the Cybertronian plate came crashing down on Earth, and the velocity from entering Earth's atmosphere causes Optimus's entire body to ignite. He thinks that this is the day his spark will finally go out, and is at peace with that. But Beachcomber comes in clutch on his super cool surfboard to grab Optimus to save him. They surf through the water vortex back to Earth. When Optimus turns his head, he sees his handiwork and can only ask himself what he's done. Because he didn't just cause another global emergency on Earth, he caused irreparable damage to Cybertron. We last saw Starscream on the brink of death by the new leader of the Decepticons, Soundwave. Our story opens with the exact moment Soundwave decides to put the exclamation mark on the disposed Decepticon ruler. Soundwave pulls out Starscream's inner workings before hurling him down a pool of lava. Whether it's by chance or destiny, Starscream ends up on the top of a piece of floating rock, the only thing preventing him from getting smelted down by the flowing lava around him. Now half unconscious after the beating he took, Starscream starts to become delirious. He starts remembering his past, back when he wasn't even called Starscream. It was a time when this particular Cybertronian simply went by the name Ulchtar. Now, Ulchtar's dream starts when one of his friends, Genvo, invites him to go out and check a special event that happens once every couple of centuries. Ulchtar is ultimately convinced to join when Jetfire arrives and tells him that this is going to be his last night on Cybertron. Later, they head for Moonbase 2 to get the best view of this upcoming event. There, Genvo, Ulchtar, and Jetfire start talking about the ongoing war that's been happening. We find out that Genvo has already chosen a side in this conflict, and he urges his friends to join him. However, Ulstar is still unconvinced about all this, as he tells Genvo that his brothers refuse to join the war. As for Jetfire, he plans on going off-world and traversing the stars with the help of Ulstar's maps in order to find a way to save Cybertron without resulting in armed conflict. We then get to see Starscream at his most gentle when he stops Genvo from crushing a bunch of Turbosects crawling on the ground. According to Ulstar, they're beautiful creatures who play a part in Cybertron's entire ecosystem. All of a sudden, Genvo points to the skies to let his friends know that the event they've been waiting for has finally arrived. Specifically, they're there to witness a colossal robot pass through Moonbase 2. The three young Cybertronians get excited, but it's not enough. To make things more memorable, Ulstar rushes to the nearest munitions cache and sets off a controlled explosion in order to grab the gigantic robot's attention. And it works too, as the colossal bot waves to the three young Cybertronians before the munitions cache guard chases them away. Later, the three say their goodbyes as Jetfire proceeds with his mission to go off-world. Afterwards, Genvo reassures Ulstar that they're still gonna have each other around. But, as we soon find out, this friendship is not long for the world, because sometime later, Ulstar spots Genvo rolling with his militant faction on Cybertron as they get into a firefight with an unseen foe. Ulstar gets caught in the crossfire, which prompts Genvo to rescue him. Unfortunately, Genvo is shot while they're making a run for it, and as the spark ebbed out of him, he told Ulstar one thing: that he screamed the stars into seeing them. We then get the reveal that the one responsible for Genvo's demise is none other than Optimus Prime. In the present, we find Starscream snapping out of his delirium when he notices that his legs have nearly all been melted away by the lava within the pit. He crawls to safety, but a group of agents from the Military Armaments Research Syndicate, aka Mars, captures him. This squad, made up of Horton, Private Raz, Private Clayton, and Private Martin, manage to chain up Starscream in order to use him for their own purposes. Starscream passes out again, and his dream from earlier continues. Now we see Ulstar carrying Genvo's lifeless body in the middle of the Cybertronian war zone, and with his last remaining friend now gone, Ulstar can only ask what he should do next. That's when a tall figure from the shadows emerges, and it's none other than Megatron. Megatron offers Ulstar a chance to avenge his friends and clan against their enemies, the Autobots. He then transforms into his blaster form and places himself in Ulstar's hands. Megatron then asks Ulstar what his brothers used to call him, and it's here that he finally dubs himself Starscream. Later, Starscream reawakens only to discover that Horton and his crew have turned his body into an abomination. To be specific, these Mars agents fused Starscream's upper body with their own landcraft called the Hiss Tank. To make sure that Starscream didn't do any funny business, Horton also made sure that they rigged Starscream with explosives. Still, this is not enough to make the former Decepticon leader cooperate, as he starts thrashing around when he spots the humans. Private Martin tries to calm Starscream down by explaining that they saved him when they welded his body to the Hiss Tank, but the Cybertronian is hearing none of it. So to subdue him, Private Clayton pulls a lever that controls the Hiss Tank. This prevents Starscream from getting any closer. Starscream then spots Private Raz's pet cat. He attempts to squash it, but she rescues the critter in the nick of time. But the cat being a cat, all Private Raz gets in return is a bite on her hand. On the bright side, Starscream finds the feline amusing, which ultimately calms him down. Horton then approaches him, and after a brief introduction, blackmails Starscream into working for his team. Starscream agrees and even pretends that he genuinely wants to team up with Horton's crew. We then get another flashback to the distant past. Here we see Starscream during his early days as part of Megatron's Decepticons. In one of their encounters against the Autobots, the Decepticons managed to capture 3 of their enemies. Megatron first tried to offer them to join his faction, but the 3 remained loyal to the Autobot cause. So, considering they're not willing to work with him, Megatron decides to take them out instead. He transforms into his blaster form and jumps into Starscream's hand. Now, what you should know is that Starscream isn't the conniving, cold-hearted robot that we all know and love at this point. So when Megatron ordered him to execute their captives, Starscream had a crisis of conscience right then and there. In the end though, Starscream remained a good soldier and followed Megatron's command. This particular event served as the spark that turned Starscream from the regular Decepticon infantry soldier into Megatron's very own executioner. Suffice it to say that this gradually turned Starscream into the villain that he is today. In the present, Horton, Starscream, and the rest of their crew come across Astrotrain, who's still chained up near the beach where Beach Bomber left him. Astrotrain let Starscream know that it was Soundwave who rescued him from the Nemesis, but you can always trust Starscream to work his charms to get what he wants. Upon hearing this, he easily convinces Astrotrain that Soundwave is a traitor who wouldn't fulfill his promise to give Megatron to Astrotrain. So Astrotrain chooses to join Starscream's new rogue faction. They then turn towards the sea and witness that a part of Cybertron still remains on Earth. Astrotrain and Starscream decide to head there. In fact, Starscream tries to sneak away from Horton and his crew when Astrotrain transforms into his shuttle form, but Horton catches on, which prompts Starscream to finesse his way out of a sticky situation again. In this case, Starscream continues to feign cooperation with these Mars agents as they allow him to board Astrotrain. The shuttle takes off, and as they fly above the sea, Starscream spots a couple of Combaticons stranded in the water. Horton takes issue with this and threatens to blow up Starscream since taking on new passengers is not part of their agreement. But Starscream yet again manages to use his silver tongue to convince Horton to let these Combaticons, namely Onslaught and Brawl, aboard the shuttle. In an instant, Horton and his entire crew lose consciousness when Astrotrain is hit by a large wave. Later, Horton wakes up to witness that Starscream has managed to gather more Decepticons to become part of his budding faction. In fact, Onslaught and Brawl wholeheartedly join Starscream after telling him about how they heard Soundwave was planning to overthrow him. On the other hand, Horton still thinks he has power over Starscream as he emerges from the other room and berates the former Decepticon leader for breaching their agreement. Horton then tries to detonate the charges inside the Hiss tank to destroy Starscream, but it doesn't work. He then finds out that the rest of his team agreed to deactivate the bombs in return for Starscream letting them go. But as you already know by now, Starscream is one crafty robot. Instead of holding his end of the deal, he instead flatlines Private Raz in an instant by squishing her with his palm. The other Mars agents try to escape, but Private Clayton ends up getting blasted. On the other hand, Starscream gives Horton some extra special treatment and rolls over him with the Hiss tank tracks. By the time Starscream was done, only a couple of survivors remained. There's Private Martin, who Starscream has decided to be their hostage and personal sketch artist. And then there's Private Raz's cat, which Starscream has honestly taken a liking towards. And with the Mars agents out of the way, Starscream tells his new army that this world now belongs to him as they prepare to take the fight to Soundwave. Somewhere else in Tacoma, Washington, Soundwave and the Decepticons lay waste to an entire city. Thundercracker is not too happy about this though. According to him, causing chaos in a city of humans wouldn't do their team any good. Instead, the Decepticons should focus on getting to the piece of Cybertron that fell on Earth in order to put things into perspective. But Soundwave has other ideas. To him, what they're doing is a necessary evil to gather more Energon and ultimately lure out the Autobots for an ambush. After their brief conversation, Soundwave orders Thundercracker to take care of a family of humans struck under a ruined building. To Thundercracker's credit, he waits for Soundwave to leave before telling the family to run and pretending to topple the building over them. Meanwhile, Cliffjumper wakes up in Cybertron where he's spotted by old friends Warpath, Bluestreak, and Blur. They save the heartfelt reunion for later as Bluestreak tells Cliffjumper to come with them to safety since they're currently being hunted by Decepticons. Back on Earth, Arcee says farewell to Optimus as she decides to go and search for her old friend and mentor, Ultra Magnus. We also find out that Spike, Carly, and Beachcomber are planning to join Arcee in her quest. Before leaving, Optimus tries to convince Beachcomber to join the Autobots, but Beachcomber's done with the war and ends up refusing Optimus's last-ditch recruitment effort. He, Arcee, and the rest of their crew then leave while Wheeljack approaches Optimus telling him about some radio chatter they picked up. Afterwards, Optimus, Wheeljack, and Jazz make their way towards the source of the radio chatter. On their way there, the three discuss the visions that Optimus has been having. Optimus wonders if these visions come from the Matrix, but Wheeljack says it's highly unlikely since Optimus has already depleted his energy. In the end, all Wheeljack could surmise is that Optimus and Spike's interactions with each other had basically caused a breakdown in his neural network. Their conversation is cut short, however, when they reach their destination. They arrive there to witness a city in ruins. Optimus then mobilizes his crew to focus on rescuing survivors. They start by lifting a wrecked bus from the rubble. However, their rescue efforts are interrupted when a group of human survivors appear and register the Autobots as a threat. Optimus tries to reason with them, but a tank shoots him with its cannon from behind, forcing him to let go of the bus full of survivors. This causes Optimus to have a breakdown right after experiencing another disturbing vision. He tries to destroy the tank, but Jazz manages to calm him down before Optimus could destroy it. Ultimately, the Autobots go for a tactical retreat. Off in the distance, we see that Soundwave and Scrapper had been watching the scene in the ruins of Tacoma unfold. Scrapper urges Soundwave to make their move against the Autobots now, but the Decepticon leader advises patience. To Soundwave, it would be best to hit them where they go for help in order to make sure that their ambush works. In the middle of their conversation, Laserbeak tries to remind Soundwave that they have to revive Ravage. But, as Soundwave puts it, they'll have to wait a little longer to do that. For now, he wants Laserbeak to go on a secret mission for them. Back on Cybertron, Cliffjumper and his crew come across a Decepticon sentry. On a side note, this sentry also happens to be the Decepticon Ramjet. To get past this guy, Bluestreak pulls out his large combat knife and takes out the sentry Rambo style. The brutality of it shocks Cliffjumper, but he's even more repulsed when he sees Bluestreak and the others harvesting the fallen sentry's Energon. Bluestreak correctly guesses that Cliffjumper has gone soft due to Optimus Prime's influence on the little guy. When Cliffjumper tries to argue his case, Elita 1 appears and greets him. Back on Earth, Optimus and his team arrive at the dam. Wheeljack tries to ask Optimus about his recent episode, but the Autobot leader admits that he has no idea what just happened to him. Wheeljack promises that he'll do more scans on Optimus once they return to the Ark. But for now, they'll have to prioritize adding more soldiers to their ranks. So the Autobots attempt to revive Trailbreaker shortly after that. However, it doesn't go as planned, as Optimus and his crew are ambushed by Starscream and his new faction just as they were about to bring Trailbreaker back to active duty. Curiously, the Autobots notice that Starscream wasn't actually targeting them in the first place. That's because we soon find out that Starscream has been following Soundwave this whole time in order to get his revenge. As for Soundwave, he and the Decepticons were originally planning on ambushing the Autobots, but seeing Starscream right here and now changes their game plan. Onslaught then mobilizes the Combaticons to come together and transform into the hulking Bruticus. While this is happening, we discover that Cliffjumper has led Elita 1 and Bluestreak to the place that Cliffjumper's clan had once called home. Elita and Bluestreak didn't know why the Autobot wanted to visit this rubble, but we immediately find out that Cliffjumper has a spark canister underneath the metallic remains of his fallen comrades. According to Cliff, they may not be able to repair any of his clansmen, but perhaps they could create new life out of the parts they salvage. Back at the dam, Soundwave's Decepticons answer Bruticus by having the Constructicons fuse into Devastator. As for the Autobots, Optimus knows that he and his squad don't stand a chance against their opponents, so he does something useful and orders his crew to retreat. Bruticus and Devastator slug it out in the middle of the dam. Not too far away, a couple of human kids stop their bike ride to witness the gigantic Cybertronians trading blows. Meanwhile, Starscream and Soundwave decide to personally settle their score as the two faction leaders put hands on each other. Starscream gets the upper hand when the Astro Train crashes into Soundwave while in his locomotive form. On the other hand, Thundercracker tries to provide backup as soon as he sees Soundwave getting knocked away. He faces up to Starscream and the two trade a few punches before Starscream reveals that Soundwave also had a hand in Skywarp's demise. Starscream almost comes out on top, but Skywarp manages to grab Horton's old Hiss tank remote control to send Starscream away. As for Soundwave, we see that he and Astro Train are currently locked in their own duel. Thundercracker arrives at their location, which prompts Soundwave to ask for his help. But instead of following the new Decepticon leader's order, Thundercracker chooses to transform into his jet form and leave the skirmish entirely. Nearby, Optimus tries to act like a grown-up and tells the warring Decepticon factions to be careful not to break the dam for fear of taking out the innocent citizens of the town nearby. Fair play to Starscream too, because he explicitly tells Optimus to shut his mouth because Decepticons don't have any time or sympathy for these so-called squishies. Optimus loses control after receiving another vision and ends up blowing a hole in the dam himself. The dam gets flooded, taking both Bruticus and Devastator along with it. We then see the two kids from earlier trying to pedal away from the incoming tsunami. It's at this point that we get a big reveal that the Autobots managed to fully revive Trailbreaker before the Decepticons attacked. Trailbreaker uses his force field to protect himself and the kids from the flood, and we see that Optimus, Jazz, and Wheeljack have also made it to safety. In the aftermath, Optimus realizes that he's gradually losing his grip as he laments on what he had just done. Back on Cybertron, Cliffjumper, Alita, and Bluestreak return to their secret base. We find out that Warpath has been repaired as Cliff prepares to leave yet again. When asked where he's going, he tells Alita and the others that he's planning on taking the spark canister to the Well of Sparks. Alita thinks it's a crazy idea since the place is under Decepticon control. However, Bluestreak convinces her that this just might be the perfect opportunity to retake the Well of Sparks and add a new recruit to their squad. Alita then presumes that Cliffjumper would be going back to Earth after this. In his response, Cliff pretty much confirms it, but clarifies that he's actually going back to see Carly again. On Earth, we see that Carly, Spike, Beachcomber, and Arcee have found themselves on the Olympic Peninsula as they continue to search for Magnus. While all this is happening, we get another big reveal. This time, it's about Laserbeak's secret mission. The winged Decepticon arrives at an unknown location in the middle of the desert. Laserbeak meets Megatron, who has been awakened. Megatron then thanks Laserbeak and links himself to the winged Decepticon so he can use him as his eyes. And with that, Megatron commands Laserbeak to lead him to his warriors. We then discover that Thundercracker is headed straight for the Ark to look for Skywarp. He eventually spots his brother and attempts to rip off the Ark's interface, but Skywarp stops him from doing so. As Skywarp puts it, removal means death. So Thundercracker tries to think of a plan to free his fellow Cybertronian from his prison. Meanwhile, on the islands, Arcee's group continues to search for Magnus. She takes this moment to thank Beachcomber for helping before asking him why he became a pacifist. Beachcomber reveals that he realized he lost his taste for war during the Decepticon ambush aboard the Ark right before they reached Earth. At this time, he saw the stars through the gaping hole in the ship, which made him realize that the universe is so much more large and beautiful than their problems. Arcee respects Beachcomber's stance on the matter, but asks him what he would do if there was really no other choice but to fight. Before he could answer, however, an explosion rocks their group. Arcee eventually finds out that Magnus is blasting them with his cannons, thinking that they're intruders. Thankfully, Arcee manages to calm her old friend down, and we find out that Magnus has built a fortress in the middle of this island. Back on Cybertron, Alita's faction makes the final preparations for their mission to retake the Well of Sparks. Alita makes it known to Cliffjumper that she's still super sore about Optimus staying on Earth, as she just falls short of calling him a traitor to the Autobot cause. On the other hand, we witness just how much of a solid lieutenant Bluestreak really is when he makes Alita realize that she's not the only one who's lost a loved one in the Autobot Decepticon war. With that, Bluestreak does a roll call before setting off for their big quest. On Earth, Wheeljack informs the Autobots that Bruticus has made a beeline north of their location. Specifically, he's headed for Seattle to go and wreak havoc there. Optimus then tells everybody to mobilize, but Wheeljack tells him to slow his roll. He then asks the Autobot leader what happened back at the dam. As you'd expect, Optimus says he has no idea, but Wheeljack isn't having any of it. He knows that Optimus is on the fritz right now, so he advises him to hang back at the Ark to get analyzed first. But Optimus is too stubborn to hear him out. Instead, he orders them to move quickly because there's no time to waste. And so the rest of the Autobots have no choice but to follow their leader. Meanwhile, we see that a couple of Decepticons named Ratbat and Thrust have been assigned to guard the Well of Sparks. Thrust is itching for a fight, and he immediately gets his wish when Alita's faction ambushes them. Alita single-handedly takes out the two Decepticons before heading with Cliffjumper to the hall. After a moment of hesitation, Cliff ultimately inserts the spark canister inside the well to start creating a new ally. At the same time, we find out that Starscream's fringe group has laid waste to Seattle, but they're not alone as he spots Soundwave's faction also trying to siphon the city's energy. Another skirmish between the two warring Decepticon groups erupt just as the Autobots arrive. Seeing the destruction that the Decepticons are causing, Optimus orders his team to focus on rescuing the citizens of the ruined city. Back at the Well of Sparks, Blades drop a mound of salvaged parts that they got to fully create a new Autobot. Bright light then shines all around the well, and when Cliffjumper turns, they see an absolute unit of an ally standing in front of them holding a sword, and his name is Shredhead. Not long after, the Autobots of Cybertron get into it with their enemies and find themselves flanked. Decepticons, Bitstream, Carnivac, and Hotlink then rush towards the Autobots' location to finish the job. Carnivac gets all saucy and decides to transform into his bestial form to literally eat Bluestreak, but a black van suddenly rams into the Decepticon and crushes him. This black van is revealed to be none other than the newest Autobot in Alita's faction, Shredhead. Believe us when we say that Shredhead is an absolute unit. This whole display makes Alita believe that they finally gained the upper hand in this war. Somewhere else, on the islands, Ultra Magnus shows his old mentee and friend Arcee the sheer extent of the damage war has done to him. As he puts it, it's too late for Ultra Magnus to return to normal again, especially after his experiences as Soundwave's hostage. However, Ultra Magnus seems to get a spark of hope when Carly joins in on the conversation and makes him realize that it's not too late to pick himself up. According to Carly, if a wannabe artist like her could get over Dad's untimely passing, then a huge metal man with guns for arms should surely overcome his hangups. Carly's pep talk almost works, but Ultra Magnus's PTSD kicks in the moment he senses intruders in their midst. That's because a squad of soldiers are currently making their way over Ultra Magnus's tree line. In response, Ultra Magnus blasts the soldiers away, which prompts Arcee to hold him back. But things happen so fast and it's too late for Arcee to come to Carly's aid when she's hit by a tranquilizer dart. The whole place gets even more chaotic when Ultra Magnus destroys one of the US military's helicopters. This forces Arcee, Beachcomber, and Spike to retreat, leaving Ultra Magnus and Carly to their own devices. In the aftermath, the military overwhelms Ultra Magnus's hideout and spots an unconscious Carly. Soldiers then bring her in for questioning. They also extract Ultra Magnus, and all that Arcee can do is look on while her friends get taken away. Meanwhile, in Seattle, Starscream and Soundwave's factions continue their devastating skirmish. Optimus and his meager Autobot squad do their best to help the city's ravaged citizens get to safety. Just above them, Astrotrain flies around in his shuttle form, while Starscream strafes Devastator aboard. From one of the buildings nearby, Soundwave summons Rumble and uses him to take down Astrotrain. Astrotrain crashes into the ground along with Starscream, which prompts Bruticus to come to his leader's aid. But just as he is about to pick up and rescue Starscream, Devastator jumps in and gives him one of the most devastating DDTs you'll ever see in Transformer comics. In fact, it's so powerful that it culminates in a massive blast in an already ruined heart of Seattle. Soundwave catches up to Starscream and the two faction leaders get into a close quarters beatdown. They get so heated and only stop when they hear an all too familiar voice telling them to cut it out. It belongs to no other than the OG Decepticon leader, Megatron. Megatron has an idea of what's been happening to his Decepticons because he immediately shows whom he's given favor to when he approaches Soundwave and uses his own spark to heal Ravage. Soundwave then bends the knee to Megatron while Starscream attempts to weasel his way out of the scene with the help of Astrotrain. But there's one problem. Astrotrain refuses to help Starscream. Meanwhile, Megatron tells Soundwave to get up because they have a lot of work to do. Not too far away, Optimus and his crew realize that their old nemesis has returned. Seeing how outnumbered and outgunned they are, Optimus sends out one order: retreat. In the past, the one and only Megatron finds himself trapped on the planet Quintessa. The Decepticon leader awakens to discover that he's been subject to a trial, and when he starts asking questions, all he gets are cryptic answers from the same entity administering this test, a Quintessan overlord named Desimir. Desimir tells Megatron that he has been chosen to be the one to achieve true glory and true power. According to him, he and his people pulled Megatron from his native Cybertron for this specific purpose. Of course, the leader of the Decepticons finds this insulting. He lashes out, but Desimir easily subdues him when the Quintessan reveals that he possesses a device especially crafted to bring Megatron under their heel. Megatron's outburst ends with a powerful shock from Desimir's tool. His lackeys take the downed Decepticon to an arena within their facility, reminding Megatron to look only towards the future. From there, Megatron's first trial begins as Desimir summons an entire shiver of Sharkticons to go after their captive. As you'd expect, this doesn't faze Megatron one bit. He revels in the heat of battle as he blasts away the Sharkticons with his gun. A few of the robotic critters get close to Megatron, but the Decepticon leader is too much of a problem to be taken down by a school of metallic fishes. His display impresses Desimir as he utters that their master would be pleased with Megatron's performance. But he spoke too soon because Megatron is not on board with the Quintessan's little game. In reply, he shoots Desimir and tells his captor to come down there and fight him. Still, Megatron proves he's not one to be easily messed with, as he ultimately lays waste to the Sharkticon horde. From there, Desimir declares that that Megatron has passed the first test in his trial. Now it's time for the second game. Megatron loses his patience and transforms into his tank form. He blasts Desimir again, but the Quintessent Overlord dodges once more. Curiously, Desimir tells the Decepticon leader that although his alternative form is impressive, Megatron could do so much more. So much in fact that Desimir tells him that Megatron could one day be like him. Now it's not like the Quintessent is blowing smoke out of his metallic self. This pet comes in the form of a giant robotic dragon named Mechanicor. And well, let's just say in spite of Megatron's battle chops, Mechanicor easily puts him in his place with a well-placed stomp of his robotic leg that crushes Megatron. Sometime later, the Decepticon leader wakes up in his cell for a second run at Desimir's trials. Again, Desimir's men drag him towards the arena and send out a fresh batch of Sharkticons towards him. The result is the same. Megatron schools the fishes, but just like his first run, the Decepticon leader finds himself squashed when he comes face to face with Mechanicor. This whole process repeats over and over, as if Megatron has been trapped in a time loop. He wakes up, gets taken to the arena, takes out some robot sharks, and then gets his Cybertronian butt handed to him when Mechanicor emerges. And before Megatron knows it, he's already at his 500th attempt at clearing the Desimir's trials. At this point, the Decepticon leader has uncharacteristically broken. Megatron does something he almost never does: concede defeat. The once proud warrior falls to his knees and begs his overlord to end the torment. But Desimir is having none of it. As the Quintessent puts it, Megatron's trials weren't meant to simply be tests. They were lessons made to allow him to realize how small he is in the grand scheme of things. Desimir goes on to drop truths on the Decepticon leader. For one, he does admit that Megatron's skills in battle far exceed that of an ordinary Cybertronian, but for all his savagery on the field, Megatron has failed to achieve his goals time and time again. As such, he's nothing, at least until he passes the Quintessent's trial. In this 500th try, Megatron soon finds himself in the same spot he's been in ever since the first trial, coming face to face with Mechanicor. It's business as usual until the two combatants hear a disembodied voice from above the arena telling them to stop. Desimir instantly recognizes this voice as his master's, and with their arrival comes the end of Megatron's trials. Afterwards, Desimir reveals that the same tool that he's been using this whole time to subdue Megatron is a dark version of the Prime's matrix of leadership. Make no mistake though, torture is not all it's good for, because it is the same device that Desimir and his master uses to give Megatron his reward for passing his trials. This comes in the form of a bright barrage of light that engulfs and seemingly disintegrates the Decepticon leader. The dust settles and Desimir rejoices as he declares that Megatron has been given the gift of the third transformation, a mode that will allow him to assert his control over whomever attempts to use him, and this form happens to be Megatron's now signature gun transformation. The story doesn't end there, as Desimir's master tells him to pick up Megatron in his gun form. Desimir knows what's about to happen next, so he pleads with his master to reconsider, especially how he served the Quintessents so loyally this whole time. But the master's words are final, and Desimir is loyal to a fault. He grabs Megatron, and the Decepticon leader asserts his influence over Desimir, forcing his former tormentor to point him towards Mechanicor. Desimir can only beg the Decepticon leader to spare his favorite pet, but Megatron's mind is decided. He shoots Mechanicor with a single blast, and it's enough to turn the dragon into scrap metal. Fast forward to the future, and we see Megatron remembering his experiences on Quintessa while leading his Decepticons during Cybertron's never-ending war. Back in the present day, in the middle of Seattle's ruined cityscape, the newly emerged Megatron surveys the land. Soundwave tells him that they should take this opportunity to go after the retreating Autobots, but the OG Decepticon leader has other plans for now. So he let Optimus and his pals go. For now, Megatron is more than ready to tie some loose ends, beginning with dealing with Astrotrain. You see, Astrotrain has held a long grudge against Megatron, and now he wants satisfaction. Astrotrain wastes no time in confronting the Decepticon leader as he transforms into a locomotive and rams himself right into Megatron. Soundwave tries to help his boss, but he stops him. Megatron is not one to back down from a formal challenge. Megatron and Astrotrain then proceed to duel duel as the Decepticon leader summons his Energon flail. Megatron lets Astrotrain get a few licks in on him, none of which are able to phase him in the slightest. On the other hand, Astrotrain is just all too happy that he gets to put hands on his arch enemy, all the while reminding Megatron of the wrongs he did to him. This makes Astrotrain forget the cardinal rule of a fistfight: less talk, more swinging. In the end, Astrotrain gets so caught up that he fails to notice Megatron going for a masterful counterattack with his flail. All it takes is a single swing from the Decepticon leader to take down Astrotrain before he hurls him from the top of the building. And just to add insult to injury, Megatron reminds his opponent that there's no justice to be had here, only strength, and Megatron is the definition of strength. Megatron soon arrives at Astrotrain's crash site. He begs the Decepticon leader to give him an honorable end, but Megatron's true colors show when he tells Astrotrain that he still has other uses for him. Somewhere else, inside a secret military base, an officer and his subordinate get talking. The private asks his superior what it's like out there with this whole robot invasion crisis happening. The officer tells the young soldier that he wouldn't wish it on anyone. From there, the private discovers that the officer he's talking to also happens to be a former chaplain. Soon enough, we learn that this facility is also the same place where humans have taken Ultra Magnus after storming his hideout. Somewhere else, at the Autobots Ark, Optimus Prime asks Spike how RC is holding up after witnessing Carly's abduction. Naturally, RC's still furious. Optimus, on the other hand, admits that the Autobots are currently spread too thin, and with the looming threat of Megatron just over the horizon, they have to scrounge up all their resources they have to shore up their defenses for their inevitable clash. Their conversation moves towards a more sensitive topic: his dad. He asks the Autobot leader where Sparky went, to which Optimus tells the boy that he's within the matrix of leadership now. This rouses hope in Spike, thinking that his dad is still alive within Optimus's spark, but the Autobot leader would rather give Spike the hard truth than ease his pain with a lie. He tells Spike that although Sparky lives on in some form, there's no way they could reach him within the matrix. Spike accepts the fact that his dad is gone, and Optimus soon bears his fears in front of the boy. You see, Optimus isn't scared of coming face to face with his age-old nemesis. What he fears is that he might lose himself in the heat of battle the same way he did all those years ago on Cybertron. In turn, Spike gives Optimus a bit of a pep talk to remind him that they're bound for some good luck. Their conversation ends when Beachcomber and Silverbolt arrive with some great news. They've successfully retrieved one another's old allies' Jetfire. Even better, we find out that Optimus has allocated their stored Energon to restore even more Autobots, the so-called Aerial Bots, a special unit created to counter the Decepticons' aerial supremacy. This group is made up of Silverbolt, Air Raid, Fireflight, Skydive, and Slingshot. Each of them can transform into planes, which Optimus hopes will even the playing field against their opponents. However, the Aerial Bots' revival came at a price. Optimus reveals that he's used up their remaining Energon reserves to bring them back to the fold. Regardless, Optimus and the rest of the crew are just happy to get a few more friends on their side of the war. Shortly after their reunion, Wheeljack tells the Autobot leader that he's prepared the diagnostic table so they could start studying the weird visions Optimus had been recently experiencing. On Cybertron, Shredhead approaches Cliffjumper and asks the Autobot what he's doing. Cliffjumper tells the newly born Autobot that he's looking for Carly. He goes on to give Shredhead an idea of who this human girl is, and when Shredhead finds out that it was Carly who painted that sweet mural on his side, the new Autobot decides to help Cliffjumper in his search for their artistic friend. While this is happening, Megatron has taken his Decepticons to the Cybertronian fragment sticking out of the middle of the Pacific Ocean. They ask their leader if this beacon can help them bring back the Ancient, aka Omega Supreme. But Megatron tells his men that that's a long shot. As he puts it, their salvation is in their own hands. Megatron then tells his men to bring over Starscream. The former Decepticon leader begs Megatron for his life, thinking that Megatron is going to use his parts to power the beacon. To Starscream's surprise, Megatron hooks him up to the device and fully repairs his body. Of course, this is Megatron we're talking about. He's not going to let Starscream's treachery slide. In fact, you could say that Megatron fixed him up because it is way more satisfying to beat a 100% healthy traitor than a damaged one. Well, that's exactly what Megatron does as he lays out Starscream's punishment the moment he steps out of the beacon's repair systems. Megatron gives Starscream a good old-fashioned beating to teach his underling not to get any treacherous ideas ever again. With Starscream put in its place, Megatron then calls on his boys to bring in Astrotrain. The Decepticon leader reveals the true purpose of why he spared Astrotrain's life. to use him as target practice. Megatron transforms into his gun form and hops into Starscream's hand. Starscream tries to resist, but Megatron's will is just too strong. Ultimately, Starscream can't do anything to stop Megatron from pointing himself towards Astrotrain and relentlessly unloading on him. When the dust settles, all that's left on Astrotrain is a hunk of twisted, burnt metal. Megatron transforms back into his robotic mode and declares that the Autobots are next. Meanwhile, back at the secret military base where Ultra Magnus is held captive, the titanic Cybertronian has a conversation with the ex-chaplain officer. Ultra Magnus pleads that he was just minding his own business before humans kidnapped him. He asks the officer what they plan on doing with him. This is answered when the officer's superior, General Flag, enters the room with his assistant. They're aboard a device meant to pick and prod into Ultra Magnus. The officer, whose name is revealed to be simply Doc, tries to reason with Flag, and he tells them that they're pretty much breaking Geneva Conventions if they start cutting into Ultra Magnus. However, the general isn't hearing any of it. He tells the Doc to step aside as he and his assistant promptly start tinkering with the poor captured Autobot. On Cybertron, Alita 1 asks Bluestreak if the preparations for the teleportation device they're crafting are done. Bluestreak tells her that everything's going swimmingly, except for the fact that they need a ton of Energon to power their device, something that they don't have. As it stands, their contraption can only handle a one-passenger trip to Earth. Alita tells Bluestreak she knows just who she should send. Meanwhile, Cliffjumper debriefs Shredhead on more details about Carly in hopes of locating the girl. Shredhead vows to find Carly, but their meeting is interrupted when Alita 1 arrives. On Earth, we find the Decepticons scouting the Ark's perimeter. Starscream tries to propose that the Decepticons should steal the Ark from the Autobots instead of destroying it. All he gets as a reward for his opinion is a solid smack in his treacherous mouth, courtesy of Megatron. Regardless, the Decepticons are able to map out their enemy's base and decide to wait until nightfall for a surprise attack. That night, inside the Ark, Optimus Prime and Wheeljack proceed with their tests to get to the bottom of the peculiar visions the Autobot leader has been recently having. Wheeljack tells Optimus that his Matrix hasn't charged one bit of energy since the last time he used it, leading them to conclude that there's something infecting his systems. Their diagnostic run is cut short when the Decepticons spring their ambush. A classic Autobot and Decepticon fight starts. Soundwave tries to finish their job quickly by sending out Devastator and Bruticus, but this falls flat when the two towering Decepticons end up squabbling with each other. Meanwhile, Optimus successfully gets Starscream in his crosshairs, but he ultimately fails to shoot down the Decepticon from the sky when his arm suddenly moves against his will and nearly shoots his fellow Autobots with his arm cannon. Unknown to both factions, Thundercracker has snuck into the Ark to reunite with his brother, Skywarp. The two Decepticons band together and use Skywarp's teleportation ability to whisk away the Ark. This causes the Autobots to crash into a crevice left in the wake of the Ark's disappearance, so Megatron decides to capitalize on this opportunity to crush the Autobots once and for all. He commands Devastator and Bruticus to deal with their downed enemies. The two giant Decepticons are just about ready to squash the Autobots like little bugs when the aerial bots come in clutch and strafe Bruticus and Devastator to distract them. The plane-themed Autobots fuse together to transform into Superion, a large Cybertronian warrior that makes quick work of the two Decepticons in front of them. While this is all happening, Optimus and the other Autobots get back to their feet. Optimus realizes that he can't be trusted with this infection plaguing him, so he decides to literally pull his right cannon-bearing arm off. Optimus can't do it by himself, so he orders his pals to help shoot off his tainted arm. Wheeljack and the other Autobots reluctantly follow the order and blast Optimus until his infected arm falls off. Superion then emerges and picks up his friends to make their retreat. Moments later, Megatron and the Decepticons arrive at the crevice. The Decepticon leader picks up his old arm, Optimus's amputated one, and attaches it to himself by transporting into his gun form. Megatron then orders Starscream to shoot Superion off in the distance. A single blast from Megatron's gun mode destroys Superion's left arm clean off his body, and the aerial bot Slingshot along with it. Optimus tries to recover Slingshot, but the other Autobots urge him not to since their ally has fallen. With no other choice, the Autobots continue their retreat. On the other hand, Megatron does one last form of disrespect towards Slingshot when he rips off his face as the Decepticon leader declares that now is the time for conquest. Superion musters all the remaining strength to gain distance from the Decepticons, but even the giant Autobot can only take so much. Superion crash lands, leaving the other Autobots stranded. Wheeljack urges everybody to pick up the pace, knowing that Megatron and his goons are hot on their heels. But there's neither time to mourn Slingshot nor prepare for another escape attempt, as the Autobots spot high beams from headlights coming their way. Our heroes prepare to make one last stand, but to their surprise, these headlights actually came from a caravan of humans led by Dr. Leo, the same doctor from the hospital that the Autobots protected from the Decepticons before. Even better, Leo and his group of survivors have come to realize that not all Cybertronians are out to destroy humanity, so they offer their help to the Autobots and load them up on the caravan. Back on Cybertron, Alita makes a decision about who to send Earth. Cliffjumper. Cliff isn't too happy about this, especially the part where Shredhead has to fend for himself alone in the war happening on their homeworld. But Alita reassures the little guy that Shredhead's not just gonna be alright, he's gonna be their ace in the hole against the Decepticons. Alita gives Shredhead and Cliffjumper some room to say their farewells. However, Cliff ultimately chooses to ignore Alita's orders by switching places with Shredhead. Of course, Alita sees this move as a bald-faced insubordination. Furious, she orders the rest of her men to bring Cliff into custody. On Earth, Optimus and the Autobots arrive at a safe zone. The Autobot leader tries to refuse Leo and the humans' help for fear that this would make them a target for the Decepticons, but he's too weak to argue his case when Wheeljack tells him that they really need all the help they can get. Leo shows them to their quarters, a spot in the back of the safe zone that would hopefully keep them hidden from the Decepticons and the military. On top of that, the Doctor shows them Ratchet's lifeless body, which the Coast Guard had retrieved from the ocean. Optimus mourns Ratchet when he sees him, but his mysterious infection acts up and knocks him down. Spike asks Wheeljack if the Matrix can cure Optimus, but he stresses that the infection is preventing it from doing just that. What's worse is that Wheeljack knows it's only a matter of time before Optimus loses all of his spark if he doesn't get rid of the infection. To help, Spike comes up with the idea to use himself as a buffer between the Matrix and Optimus. He places one of his hands inside the Matrix and touches Optimus with the other. This causes Optimus's consciousness to travel to the realm within the Matrix of Leadership, a place called the Hall of Primes. Somewhere else, Megatron and the Decepticons continue their hunt for the Autobots. Soundwave and Laserbeak have used their abilities to track down Optimus's residual energy, which leads them to the same burial spot the Autobot leader made for the doe he accidentally took out all the way back in the beginning of this series. From this, Megatron learns of Optimus's fondness for humanity. To his credit, the Decepticon leader admits that he finds Earth beautiful, just like Optimus does. The difference between them is that, unlike him, Optimus doesn't have the ball bearings to do what's necessary to restore Cybertron to its former glory. In the end, Megatron calls off his search for Optimus. When Soundwave asks what brought this on, Megatron tells him that he's about to teach Optimus one final lesson before putting him 6 feet under, that all hope leads to ruin. Not long after, we see the American military complex has mounted an all-out offensive against the Decepticons. It doesn't go as they've planned. In fact, it goes horribly wrong for the G-Men. None of their weapons work against the Cybertronians, and the Decepticons easily rout their forces. Even Bruticus and Devastator decide to make a game out of who can take out as many humans as possible. Somewhere else, General Flag interrogates Carly in a room at the same secret facility they're keeping Ultra Magnus captive. Flag forces Carly to spill the beans about the Cybertronian's weakness, but the girl has nothing but the truth for this high-ranking soldier. Flag goes on to try and convince Carly to side with the military in the name of the United States of America, but Carly is having none of it. In a different room, Doc watches on as researchers continue to cut into Ultra Magnus. This barbaric display eventually gets to him. Doc decides to betray his employers by freeing Ultra Magnus from his restraints. Ultra Magnus takes advantage and whisks away both Doc and Carly during his escape from the military base. Eventually, Ultra Magnus and his friends gain some much-needed distance from the military. Doc tells the hulking Autobot to leave him so that he can face a court-martial for his actions. Before parting ways though, Ultra Magnus asks Doc how he's able to carry on with his life in spite of the horrors he's seen in war. Doc answers, telling Ultra Magnus that he has people he cares about, ones that keep him going. Ultra Magnus then realizes that he has important people like that in his life too, referring to Optimus and all the others. This ignites a renewed sense of courage within Ultra Magnus, so he transforms and makes his way towards his friends. Back at the safe zone, Wheeljack and Leo keep an eye on Spike and Optimus. Wheeljack reveals that he has no idea what's happening with the Matrix of Leadership right now, since the only beings who were able to interact with it up to this point were Cybertronians. And now that Spike is hooked up to it and Sparky basically merged with the artifact, Wheeljack concedes that perhaps none of them understood what the Matrix was really all about. Their conversation is cut short when Wheeljack notices their caravan moving. Leo tells them that they're headed for Chicago, the same place where humanity makes its last stand against the Decepticons. Meanwhile, at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean, Shredhead emerges from the teleportation device and begins his search for Carly. Shortly after, in Chicago, we see the remaining Autobots helping humans evacuate a section of the city where the Decepticons arrive to terrorize them. He reports back to Megatron, who is not too pleased that Starscream went all Maverick again and ruined their original plan of mounting a surprise attack against their enemies. Still, the Decepticon leader works with what he has, so he orders Soundwave to tell all the other Decepticons to move in for a full-on offensive. At the same time, Optimus continues his vision quest inside the Hall of the Primes. He eventually reaches a part of the hall corrupted by the same infection that's been plaguing him. The infection appears as laser-like tentacles that coil around Optimus and subdue him. Sparky arrives just in time to help Optimus snap out of it and roll out of there. In the real world, the Autobots and surviving humans gather around Optimus's unconscious body. They know that they're losing this war, and it might be the end for each and every one of them. So they all decide to hold an impromptu funeral for Optimus, with people he's helped lining up to pay their final respects towards the Autobot leader. Harley and Ultra Magnus eventually reach their allies just in time to say farewell to Optimus. In turn, Ultra Magnus gives an absolute heart-wrenching eulogy for his old friend before turning his speech into a rousing call to arms. Ultra Magnus declares that although this may be their last day in the land of the living, there's no way in hell they're gonna go down without a fight. He assumes leadership of the remaining Autobots and mounts one final confrontation against their Decepticon rivals. Sparks fly, and so do hunks of metal when their forces clash against one another in this climactic last stand between Optimus's Autobots and Megatron's Decepticons. Meanwhile, Sparky and Optimus have a heart-to-heart in the Hall of Primes. Sparky notices that the infection is spread throughout every nook and cranny of the hall, except for him. Back in the real world, Autobots fail to hold the line due to the Decepticons' sheer combat capability. Starscream manages to get past the other Autobots and make a beeline for the downed Optimus in spite of Megatron's orders to wait. When he gets there, Starscream has no hesitation in shooting down Spike, Optimus, and Carly, but Beachcomber comes up clutch when he uses the body to shield his friends from Starscream's attack. Inside the Hall of Primes, Optimus leads Sparky to Spike and tells him that the boy is pretty much using himself as a bridge to allow Optimus to interact with Sparky in the hall. Both Sparky and Optimus find comfort in the shared trauma of their losses, and in the end, Sparky decides to sacrifice what's left of his life force to free Spike from the Matrix's hold and cure Optimus of his infection. Before disappearing completely, Optimus promises Sparky that he'll take care of Spike. In the real world, Starscream is just about ready to gun down Carly and Optimus when Megatron arrives to give his subordinate a much-deserved slap for his insubordination. But Megatron does share the same opinion with Starscream when it comes to what they should do with these humans. Earth's native species are disposable, so Megatron points his cannon at Carly. Optimus revives just in time to rescue Carly and a newly awakened Spike. Optimus declares that humanity is under his protection, while Megatron couldn't be happier that he now has a chance to put hands on his most hated rival. Starscream tries to convince Megatron to double-team Optimus together, but the Decepticon leader tells him to stand down. Megatron levels the playing field by taking off his arm cannon so he and Optimus can properly scrap. And with Optimus uttering the classic line, "One shall stand, one shall fall," the two arch-rivals lunge at each other. Things instantly erupt between the two leaders as Optimus Prime and Megatron get into a close-quarters clash. No guns, no laser beams, just full-on metal-on-metal action. Optimus manages to gain some distance from his enemy, but he's not here to run. This actually gives him enough momentum to rush towards Megatron and ram the guy in Optimus's big rig form. It's super effective as Megatron is sent flying towards the side of the building. Optimus knows knows to capitalize on this opportunity, so he climbs the opposite building and prepares to deliver Megatron a final blow. Optimus tells his arch nemesis to never mistake his kindness for weakness, because anyone who does is bound to get their butt kicked. That's when Optimus jumps off the building he's on and proceeds to deal Megatron a literal explosive sledgehammer that leaves the Decepticon leader lying on his back. The thing is, Megatron might be a little worse for wear right now, but he's far from defeated. Megatron spots a random guy nearby who's looking for his child. This sparks a light bulb inside the Decepticon's head. He can use Optimus's fondness for humans against him. So Megatron gets back on his feet and proceeds to squash the guy under his boot. All Optimus can do is watch in shock and horror as this happens. Meanwhile, Megatron slowly walks towards the remaining humans in the vicinity, taunting Optimus with the fact that their fight will inevitably lead to more unnecessary casualties. It's enough for Optimus to pause and take stock of what's happening. Megatron takes advantage of this and hits the leader of the Autobots with a double-fisted punch to the chest. And just to add insult to injury, Megatron makes sure he sends Optimus flying towards the humans. Optimus is able to stop his momentum before crashing into the crowd. Again, this allows Megatron to force him to protect the humans instead of dealing with his enemy. Megatron proceeds to deal the Autobot leader with a series of devastating, unanswered blows to his head and body. And to be fair, Megatron does have a point when he pretty much tells Optimus that the reason he's losing is because he's too soft. Optimus isn't willing to make the hard choices, which makes him unfit to save Cybertron. Optimus falls to the ground after being on the tail end of Megatron's beating. Starscream swoops in and gets excited, declaring his boss the winner of this epic showdown. The Decepticon leader turns himself into his gun mode and jumps into Starscream's hands. Starscream asks for the green light to pull the trigger and end their opponent right then and there, but Megatron has other ideas. He orders Laserbeak and Starscream to carry the downed Optimus. They then soar through the skies until they spot a tall building with a huge antenna on it. Megatron gives the order and they drop Optimus down, impaling him right through with one of the antennae on the building. The dastardly Decepticon leader then tells his half-conscious Optimus Prime that he's about to teach him one final lesson before ending his spark. His monologue is interrupted when Soundwave climbs up the building with an update regarding their war against the Autobots. The good news is they've won the skirmish, but the bad news is the Decepticons themselves have suffered heavy losses from this fight. On the ground, Devastator and Bruticus lick their wounds while Magnus apologizes to Arcee for failing the Autobots. All of a sudden, Spike and Carly emerge from the smoke and fog of war to try to lend their Autobot friends a helping hand. Starscream rushes the two kids from behind and proceeds to abduct them. He then picks up Beachcomber with one hand and proceeds to Megatron and Optimus's location on top of the building. It's here Megatron reveals his morbid lesson to his sworn enemy as he offers Optimus a choice to test where his allegiances really lie. Specifically, Megatron wants the Autobot leader to select which of the Decepticon hostages he's gonna save, Carly and Spike or Beachcomber. And just to make sure Optimus doesn't act all soft again, Megatron reassures him that he's going to take out all of these hostages if he fails to make a choice. So Megatron demands an answer, while Beachcomber pleads with Optimus to choose him and spare the two kids. But Optimus is one stubborn Cybertronian if nothing else. He refuses to choose between his Cybertronian brethren and the race he has recently sworn to protect. Megatron is a man of his word. The leader of the Decepticons has had enough of Optimus's lack of choice, so he orders Starscream to eliminate all their captives. Starscream is just about to gladly pull the trigger when everyone on top of the building sees something overhead, and it's big even by Cybertronian standards. A gigantic robot flies across the sky, one that resembles Omega Supreme, the same near-legendary Cybertronian that Starscream and his old friends saw back on their home planet way before he became part of this brutal war. The sight of this robot leaves Optimus Prime in awe. Meanwhile, Starscream has been rendered frozen in place, unable to hear Megatron's orders to take out the hostages. Still in his gun form, Megatron demands Starscream to obey his will. But seeing this gigantic Cybertronian above them awakens something in Starscream. He refuses his boss's orders and instead reminds himself of his true name, Ulshtar. This blatant insubordination leaves Megatron absolutely livid, so he jumps off of Starscream's hand and proceeds to court-martial his unruly subordinate by shooting him in the head. With Starscream down, Megatron turns his attention towards Carly and Spike to show Optimus the consequences of his indecision. But as if on cue, Shredhead leaps into action and masterfully carves Megatron with his energy sword. He then turns to Carly and tells the girl that Cliffjumper had sent him. They're not out of the woods yet as Soundwave jumps in to attack Shredhead. Shredhead Shredhead proves that there's no ordinary Autobot when he sends Soundwave hundreds of stories down the building with a single hit of his sword's pommel. Shredhead wastes no time and cuts down the antenna Optimus is impaled to. Meanwhile, Megatron changes his tune and starts begging for Optimus's mercy now that the tables have turned. Optimus pulls out the antenna from his gut and takes a hard swing at Megatron. Like Soundwave, Megatron is sent flying down to the city streets. Devastator comes up clutch and catches their boss mid-fall, after which Megatron gives the order for all Decepticons to retreat. Starscream seems like all the spark has left him. Shortly after, Optimus has another vision. This time, he sees Spike's birth through Sparky's eyes. Optimus comes to as we find him holding an unconscious Spike in the palm of his hand. Spike wakes up and Optimus could not be more relieved. The Autobot leader then turns to Beachcomber, who apologizes to him for not doing more, but Optimus is just happy that his friend was able to survive their brutal encounter with the Decepticons. More good news comes when Carly and everyone else notices a glow in Optimus's chest. Optimus reveals that the matrix of leadership residing in him has finally started to heal. Carly has doubts, telling Optimus that the matrix light is too small, but as Optimus puts it, yes, the light is indeed small, but it is still mighty.